Hello, this is Scott, and I just came back from the tournament Saturday, and I got second place using Spellbooks. I tried recording this on table, and the video came out really nice, the way I wanted it to come out, but my phone, for some reason didn't record it, and I ran out of battery, and I want to get this video out, so I'm recording it on my bed here. This is kind of like my old Yu-Gi-Oh video where I did the Blackbuster Soldier video, and I also recorded that on my bed. So I wish to record this on the table. I was planning on doing that, kind of like the mail opening video. The way I recorded that, I wanted to do that, but my phone was acting up, and my phone's really old. I have to get a new one. Maybe then I'll have less recording issues. But yes, I got second place using this deck. I go to tournaments to buy cards, not really to play, so I didn't expect to get second place. There was only like 12 people there, but I did get like 5 wins. So this is my spellbook deck. I don't know if people know about spellbooks, or if they're hard to find. You don't see too many people playing them. They used to be really popular, and now they're not. So this is just gonna be a deck profile on the deck I got second place with, and I beat the new TGs, which are actually really strong. Basically a spam deck. They can make 12-star synchros pretty easy, like Quasar and Blazar pretty easy. So it's a pretty hard deck to deal with. Luckily I stopped them before they made Blazar, because I couldn't deal with Blazar. Anyways, that's the intro. For the deck profile, let's see here. Give me a second. Okay. Now for the deck profile part. So this is Spellbooks. If you don't know what Spellbooks do, they mostly search and try to control the board. In your deck, this deck only has 12 monsters in it for consistency. Also, I'm using pure spellbooks, and most of the prophecy monsters. The prophecies are the monsters, and the spellbooks are the spells. And most of the prophecy monsters aren't very good. Usually they have a high cost with little reward, or little reward just in general. So you want cards with like high value basically, and high tempo. So I'm only using like half of the prophecy cards, not even half of them. I did make changes to this deck before recording, only because I needed improvements, because I lost the blue eyes because I had a bad hand, and what was the other thing? I only changed like 4 cards, so majority of the deck stayed the same. This deck doesn't have an extra deck, because there's only 12 monsters in it, and there's no tokens, nothing like that. If you want extra deck, you can add like Sky Strikers or something like that to the deck, or some sort of engine. So, first 3 cards are 3 Spellbook Magician of Prophecy. What this card does is it adds, this card is normal summon or flip face up. You add any spellbook from your deck to your hand. Because it's Spellbook Magician of Prophecy, It can also target itself, and it also works with any of the spellbook cards, except for Tower, because Tower specifically lists spellbook spell. Anytime it says spellbook, this card also counts as a cost. It's a spellcaster, it's level 2. It's not very strong, you just use it for the search effect. And this deck does a lot of searching. Like, you'll search probably half your deck on your first turn, and it's mostly to set up the second turn. The second turn is usually when you do most of your work. This deck can probably be stopped really easily. But I don't know, I went up against Solomon Greats. This guy had a bunch of hand traps, and the only reason I lost is because I got like 5 dead cards in a row, and he got a better hand than me. And he also top decked a card that let him draw like 3 cards. So I could have won against Solomon Greats, but I just got unlucky there, which is why I needed to change the deck. Two High Priestess of Prophecy. This is the card you want to like try to win the game with. What this card does is, if you have 3 spellbooks in your hand, this also counts as cost. You can special summon her. You can special summon both of these at once if you want. The other effect, that's her summoning condition. That's the main way to get her out. You can also tribute her out. I wouldn't recommend it, but it is a way you can do it. The other effect is you can banish a spell card from your spellbook spell from your graveyard to destroy any of your opponent's cards. So it's once per turn and it destroys 1 card. It does target, it does destroy, so it's not the strongest card anymore. It used to be really good. It's still pretty good. It's got 2500 attack, so it's not the strongest card out there. But if you take out the right card at the right time, you can win you games. And if your opponent, if you get this out first turn, which you can, it's not a bad opening turn. Anyways, it's pretty good. I like it at 2. I don't really like it at 3. 3 kind of gets in the way. I'd rather have 2 of these and like a Monster Reborn. Which, if you ever run Monster Reborn in this deck, you will always want to target her. Let's see here. Put it like that, I guess. There we go. The next card is Strength of Prophecy. 2 of these. What this card does is you target 1 spellbook card in your graveyard, and you shuffle it back in your deck, and she gains 500 attack, bringing your attack to 2000. It's a once per turn effect, so you can use this in every turn. As long as you have spellbook cards in your graveyard, which you will, because a lot of the spellbook cards you use immediately and then they're gone. So what's the point of her? She recycles your cards, and she's also a target for a lot of your spellbook spells. You need a target to activate them, and she's really a target. And you can make her bigger. You can use her for a bunch of effects. You can use her as costs. She's basically fodder, but you need fodder in this deck for the spells to work. And so she's basically just a body. The other spellbook monsters don't have an attack boost like she does. I also found her recycling to be more useful. There's other prophecy monsters that search and do other things, but I found her to be the best out of all of them. Out of all the level 4 prophecy monsters, I think she's the best. There are other ones that are pretty close, but I do think she's the best. Next card is Temperance. I only have one because that's all my card shop had, but I would recommend getting 2 to 3 of these. This card's effect is it has 1,000 attack, but it doesn't matter. And it's level 3, and that doesn't matter. You only want the effect. The effect is really strong. If you activate Spellbook during your main phase, you can tribute this card anytime after that. So if you activate Spellbook immediately, you can tribute it main phase 2 if you want. And you can special summon a level 6, level 5 or higher light or dark spellcaster monster. So you use this guy to get out your big guys with, and usually win the game with. This card is pretty important for damage, and usually when you bring this guy out and use this effect, you want to win like the next turn after that. Because this deck doesn't have that many monsters in it, so if you bring out your big guy, you want to win pretty much the next turn afterwards. The next card is Destroyer. This card's effect is it can bring itself back to life if you banish 3 spellbooks from your graveyard as costs. It doesn't have any other effects. It doesn't have any effects while it's on the field. It has 2,500 attack, which is a lot of the spellbook monsters have, or prophecy monsters have 2,500 attack. So this is normal. It doesn't have above average attack. It has normal attack. It is a 6-star monster, so you can use this for tribute. Tributing the smaller monsters is a good strategy. Again, this card serves the same purpose as Strength, as it's just fodder, and is used for targets for the spellcaster monsters. And that's pretty much it. The only purpose of this card is for targets for the spells and the do damage, and that's it. This card, Reaper of Prophecy. This card, its effect is if you have 5 or more spellbook spells in the graveyard, you can special summon him out from your deck. So you don't want to draw this guy, or it makes him dead. That last effect only activates if it's special summoned by Temperance. If it's special summoned by Spellbook monster, you get those effects. It has 3 effects. The first one is it gains 600 attack. The second effect is it adds 1 spellbook from your deck to your hand. And the third effect is to summon Destroyer. You can also summon a different proxy monster, but I find Destroyer more useful. If you don't want Destroyer, another option is Wheel of Prophecy. Wheel of Prophecy returns your banished spells to either your graveyard or your deck, which is pretty good. You have the choice of either one. So Wheel of Prophecy, it has less attack, I believe, but it lets you decide where your banished spells go. And you will be banishing spells a lot. Next card is Kaiko 2. Oh, and you pretty much just want one of each of these, because you never want to draw him, and you pretty much never want to draw him. We do put 2 or 3 Temperance in this deck. It's just for these guys. That's pretty much it. You can't summon the girl with him, but you can only get his effect off through Temperance. So most of the time you'll be Temperancing him out. Kaiko serves the same purpose as Strength. The reason I have 2 Kaiko and 2 Strength instead of 3 Strength and 1 Kaiko is just for variety. Having a bunch of cards that have the same effect, like their effects don't stack, so having more than 1 card on the field doesn't make your field any better. So I like the 2 and the 2. These two I just added in. I seen a deck profile years ago that had these two in it, and this deck used to be really popular years ago. So I'm guessing at the peak at this deck's strength, these two were really good. Oh, this card's effect is if it does damage at all, you can banish 2 cards from your opponent's graveyard, and your opponent cannot banish cards from graveyard from either player graveyard. So it's both a minor floodgate, and it can banish cards from your graveyard. And in this day of age, that's actually relevant. It has 1800 attack, which isn't bad. It's higher than most cards in the deck. And it's mostly used for attacking over stuff. 18 isn't much, but you can change it using the cards and other cards in the deck. That's it for monsters. Next up is spells, which is what this deck focuses on. 3 secrets. I think 3 secrets is a staple. This card simply searches out any spellbook card in your deck, including Vision of Prophecy. A common thing to do is use this to search him out, then use this card to get rid of him. So you send these 2 cards to the grave. What this card does is you get rid of a card and you draw 2 cards. So for the price of 3 cards, you get a Pot of Greed. That might sound like a lot, but it sets up Tower. It sets up Fate. Spellbook of Fate. So it sounds like a lot, but it actually sets you up. Kind of like Trade-In, how Trade-In sets up Blue Eyes. So this is probably the hardest card to use, simply because you have so many options, and because those options lead to more options. So this is probably the hardest card in the deck, and take the most skill to use. But most of the time, you'll be searching out this. Most of the time, you'll be searching out this or Fate. I'll show you what Fate does later. Next up is Knowledge. You can send a spellbook monster from your hand or field to graveyard to draw 2 cards, or you can send a spellbook card from your hand or field to the graveyard to draw 2 cards. So this card is a Pot of Greed for the deck. It is searchable using this card or this card. So you have 2 searchers for it. And there are continuous cards. There's a field spell. If you don't like the field spell, it's not helping you out, you can send that card to the grave to draw 2 cards, and you can always get another field spell later. So I use this on cards that I can't use. If there's a master in my hand, I can't use it. I use this to get rid of it and draw 2 cards. If there's any card in your hand or on the field that you don't find useful in the current duel, I would send it to the grave to draw 2 cards. Next up is Spellbook of Power. I like having 3 of these. Oh, I don't like having 3 of these because you want draw power, but you also don't want to deck out, and you can deck out this deck. Also, having 3 of these, you can have as many Pot of Greeds in your deck as you want, but drawing Pot of Greed into Pot of Greed, I don't know, I don't like it. I'd rather draw into stuff that helps. I am. Get used to it. It's my way or the highway. Night. Night, Dad. Alright. So, this card is Spellbook of Power. This card is what, this card is the reason why I picked those monsters. What this card does is, you pick a spellcaster, it gains 1,000 attack, and if you destroy any monster with it, you can add a spellbook card from your deck to your hand. So you want spellcasters of high attack, and I picked the card of high attack and good effects. You can use this on strength. If you use this, it'll boost her to 2,500 attack, and if you use her effect to gain 500 attack, she'll be at 3,000. This is to the end phase, and another thing about power is its effect stacks. So you can give her more attack, and if you have 3 of these on one guy, if you have 3 powers on one monster, and it destroys a monster by battle, you get 3 searches. Now it does have destroy a monster by battle, so if the monster that you're destroying, if something happens to it, you won't get those searches. So when you pick that monster to destroy, often the monster you destroy is the weakest monster on their board. You either want to destroy the weakest monster or the strongest monster. Sprayer to destroy the monsters like in between. You either want to get rid of the problem card using high attack and get over it, or you want to get rid of the weakest card they have just for the search. So I picked 3 of these. 3 of these is good. This card helps you get rid of stuff. This card helps you. You can attack directly with this card, so it ends games. This plus Priestess is 3,500 attack, which is pretty good for ending games. You can stack it, so she can have up to 5,500 attack, which will end. That's pretty good, and they'll end most games. This guy's pretty good. Let me just check my phone and see if I'm still recording. Oh, am I still recording? Yep, okay. Last time I did this, wasn't even recording. Okay. So, next card in the deck, Spellbook of Mastery. Spellbook of Mastery, all it does lets you copy any of your spellbooks in graveyard and copy their effect. So this card essentially does nothing. You have to have a card in your graveyard. Like if you have power in graveyard, it'll copy power. Power is not once per turn, but all the other spellbook cards are. They're hard once per turn. So this card lets you get over the hard once per turn effect. I would highly recommend 3 of these instead of 2 or 1, just because this lets you do a lot more per turn than you can. Like normally you can only search once per turn, but with Mastery you can search two times per turn, which is pretty strong. It's a very strong card. The requirements for Mastery is you have to have a spellcaster on the field, and you have to reveal a spell book in your hand. It's a very easy requirement to meet, but if you can't meet it, I would send it to the graveyard to draw 2 cards. Next card is Fate. Fate is your removal. You can banish 3 if you have a spellcaster on the field, you can banish 3 cards from your graveyard to non-target banish something, which is like one of the strongest ways to get rid of something. Non-targeting banishment will get rid of like 90% of the cards in the game. There are two other effects. If you banish one spellbook card, you can bounce the spell on trap, but you never use it. The second effect you almost never use is you can banish two spellbooks from your graveyard. You can only choose one of these effects, so you almost always choose the banish effect. But the second effect is you can target one monster on either side of the field and flip it face down. You almost always want to choose Blue Boy, because if you flip it face up, you get another search. So you can get two searches instead of one. Also, if you don't want it to banish, you can flip it face down and use Spellbook of Power to get rid of it. So it's a very universal card. You basically always want one of these on your field, because it is a quick play. You almost either always want to have this on the field or always want one in your hand, and you almost always want to search it. So this card is a must-have. You really need this card to do anything with this deck. You want 3, and you want to have this card in your hand at almost all times. Next is Starfall. Starfall just simply boosts your monster's attacks. Anytime you activate a spellbook, you gain a counter. So if I activate a spellbook card, it gets a counter. I have 3 dice, but sometimes 3 isn't enough. I might have to get more dice. So if I have 1 counter on this, all my monsters gain 100 attack. Doesn't matter which monsters you have, and it has to be a spellbook card, which this deck is like 80% spellbook cards. So requirement is really easy to do. It is a continuous spell card, which means you can book of knowledge it if you want. It has a second effect where if it's destroyed, you can search a card equal to the level of counters. So if you have like 15 counters on this card, you can search like any monster in your deck. I got this up to like 20 counters, so all my monsters gain 2000 attack, which is really good. I have it at 2. You can have it at 1. I would not recommend 3. Work. 1 Eternity. What this card does, you can target 1 banished spellbook that's removed from play and add it to your hand. What this card allows you to do is reuse cards that are banished, and you can reuse cards in your grave. You can banish something in, okay, when you use Spellbook of Fate, when you banish something, you want to use it later. What I do is I use banishment. You never want to banish this card, for obvious reasons. You never want to banish this card. You can banish this card, Mastery, then use this to get it back, which lets you use it. Okay, so the thing about spellbooks is I use this card, Secrets. I use Secrets like 10 times in one duel. You can use the same card like over and over and over again with all the recycling you do. This deck recycles a lot, so most of the time you'll use the same cards over and over again. So Eternity is mostly used for recycling, and it lets you search from your Secrets, lets you search from your graveyard. Eternity lets you search from your remove from play pile. So it's pretty good either way. It's a good card. I only have about one because you don't banish that much, but the times you do banish, it's important to like add those cards back. The field spell is the next card. Spellbook. Grand Spellbook Tower. This card recycles your graveyard and lets you draw a card during your standby phase. So you target one spellbook in your graveyard and you put it on the bottom of your deck and you draw a card. If this card is destroyed, you get to special summon a spellbook monster from your graveyard or from your deck equal to the number of spellbook, equal or lower than the number of spellbook cards in your graveyard. So if it gets destroyed, you get summoned from your deck, which is optional, and you almost never want to do it because you want to normal summon most of the time, and you almost never want. It's important that you get the most value out of all your monsters because you only have 12 of them. So if you summon a monster during your opponent's turn and they kill it, it hurts you a lot tempo wise. You can reuse the spells over and over again, but you can't reuse the monsters. So you want to be really careful with your monsters. Tower is another very good Spellbook of Knowledge target. You can send this to grave to draw 2 cards. And then you can actually tower. So you can activate tower, put tower on the bottom of your deck, and draw another card. So you draw a card for your turn, then you draw another card during tower. Tower only activates during your turn. It doesn't do anything on your opponent's turn. Terraforming this adds the field spell to your hand. You don't really need this, but it does deck fin, and you want to deck fin with spellbooks. Traps. 3 drowning. This is for removal, and I find shuffling the best removal. Shuffling or back to the hand is probably the best removal, because back to the hand shuts down a lot of extra deck monsters, and shuffling also shuts down. Shuffling shuts down a lot of decks. Now it does shuffle the cards back in their deck, which slows them down for a couple turns. So if you're drowning, you really want to make the most of it and do something proactive the next turn. If anything else, it stalls you for a turn. So what drowning does is, if you have no monsters, all your opponent's monsters, if they attack and you have no monsters, all their monsters go back in their deck. It's a very strong card. You have to have no monsters. What I do a lot with this deck is I set a drowning and like 2 spells. So this card is the actual trap, and these 2 spells don't actually do anything, but these 2 get destroyed. It doesn't hurt me any. So you want to set down like fake traps, basically, like baits, and you can bait a lot with this deck. If you have spells that aren't useful to you, I would set them as traps. So you can have 3 or 2, up to you. Both are good. If you want to change something to the deck, you can take them out. I do have a side deck, but this video is getting long, and I don't have time to go over the side deck. Impulse. Impulse is a dual-purpose card. You can send your opponent's cards to your hand, or you can save your monsters. Or what I do a lot is I use Compulse on Blue Boy to get another search. Because if you have 1 Blue Boy in your hand or graveyard, you can search a lot. You can compulse it. You can summon this, search, compulse it, search. You can summon it, search. Use Spellbook of Fate to search again, because you want to search a lot this deck. You basically want to fill your deck or your graveyard with Spellbook cards so you can banish them for Fate. You basically want to build this deck around Spellbook of Fate. And you also need a lot of Spellbooks in your graveyard for Strength and Tower. And a Floodgate goes in Mesh. Your opponent players can only control one attribute. All the proxy monsters are a different attribute. What you really want is Rivalry of Warlords. That way they can only control one type of monster, like Warrior. Now that doesn't hurt a lot of decks, but it does stop them from extra deck summoning. Because most of the time they'll have like a bunch of warriors and they'll go into like a dragon. With this they can't do that, so it stops their extra deck summoning. And this deck doesn't have an extra deck. Basically what this deck excels on is punishing mistakes. You can use the cards to punish some mistakes and get searches out of. I can't go over the side deck as much as I want to, but here's the side deck. It's not 15 cards because I just kind of threw stuff together. So, Vortex Lightning, Swords of Concealing Light, put their guys down, then Spellbook of Power them. Monster Reborn for Priestess, Deck Thinning, Call by the Grave, Negation and Removal, Negation, Damage, more of those. Monster Reborn, basically, with a high requirement. It has a high requirement, this Monster Reborn. Text your one monster. This makes your spellcaster completely immune to spells or completely immune to traps for a turn, which I find is really strong. It's just a tournament I go to. It rarely came up, so it's extremely strong card. You just almost never use it. Jar of Avarice. This is so you can get these guys back in your deck and use them again. So you can have lots of search power. It's basically search power of the deck. Even though this deck has a lot of search power, you can still brick with it. You draw like 3 Masteries and like 2 Kaiko, that's kind of a bad hand. The hand you want is like a blue boy, like a pulse, like a terraforming, all, probably Mastery, and if you go second, probably Strength. This is probably, I would consider this a good hand. So this is an example of a good hand. So you search, so what you do is you summon him first, search secrets, use that for Mastery. Then you can go into basically whatever you want. You can go into Fate if you want. So summon him, search, Mastery, copies in effect, copy this, extra search. So these cards are gone, this card's on the field, this card's in your hand. activate this, get tower. This card's gone. Activate this first, I forgot. So this has like 5 counters on it. Set this, and you can put this back in your hand. You set this card down, activate it, put this back in your hand, and you start the cycle over again. You can search another one of these, and do more searching. Once all your searching is done, you can summon her out and gain a bunch of attack. And then you can use this to protect her and get rid of any card you want. It's a very simple deck, but at the same time it's kind of complicated. What you want to get rid of really depends on what your opponent's deck is. But for the most part, you want to get rid of any monster that has high attack. If you do that, you're in good hands. This deck has 0 spell trap removal. But I still got second place even with that. So any questions, let me know. If you want to change the deck, feel free. I got second place with it. I like it. I like it the way it is. I have more fun with this deck than say Sylvans. I like Sylvans a lot, but I just like I don't know. I guess I just like the whole 12 monster thing. It's interesting. It's weird playing a deck with low monster count. And most of the monsters are just fodder. So only like 2 of the monsters that actually mean anything. So that's the video. Hope you liked it. This is Scott. Hopefully you like it. Alright, bye.